Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. As we have heard, there are situations of violence and outcry in Haiti, and action needs to be taken. And the people of Haiti are probably expecting some action to happen because of the violence that is happening and the disorder. And we're going to hear from the permanent member of Ireland to the Security Council talk about in a stakeout, talk about that action that should be taken. We're also going to hear from the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, also talk about what that action is, and a couple other matters that are actually happening around the world that involve violence and people being in harm's way. And we have another segment that is a ceremony, a UNICEF ceremony around extreme poverty and the effects it has on children. Children are our future. We need to protect our future. That means that we need to also protect and feed, educate our children as we put value to their lives and the direction of their lives.
Okay, we're very
let's listen to the show.
Concerned with the situation in Haiti. We're very, very pleased.
Again, thank you for listening.
At Security Council this afternoon. We have the violence by the armed gangs, we have the blockade of the port, we have the humanitarian situation, cholera. It really is, as I say in my statement, it's almost a scene from hell, and it needs to be addressed by the Security Council. We're very, very supportive of the Secretary General's comments about the need to assist the National Police. Work has not started on that particular resolution, but we will look forward to assisting that work when it takes place. Likewise, we're working quite intensely at the moment on a resolution on a sanctions regime. We absolutely understand the need for urgency here, but also the need to get it right. So that's where we are in relation to sanctions, and we will support work on assistance for the National Police Service in due course.
So would Ireland consider sending forces, sending police, sending troops to join this international strike force? And do you have any concerns about this? You say you welcome the Secretary's proposal, but as we speak, there are people on the streets of Haiti protesting, saying we don't want foreign troops.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on actual troop commitments or police commitments. We're not at that stage yet. In terms of the situation on the ground, I think what we want is what the people of Haiti need and what they want, and that's very, very important. And it's very important that when we're designing solutions and resolutions, we take on board their views and their needs as well. So I think that's the balance we're trying to strike here in this work.
Mr. Ambassador, when are you expecting the sanctions resolution to be voted on?
I know it's not happening today. As I said, it's urgent, but also we need to get it absolutely right and nailed down. So I don't know exactly when there'll be a vote on it. We don't have that information yet, but it won't be today as far as I know.
What message do you hope the Security Council, by this sanctions resolution, if you're able to get it later in the week, will be sending to those gang leaders?
I think what I understand it's the first new sanctions regime we'll be putting in place in 5 years, so it's an extremely important message from the Security Council that what they're doing is completely unacceptable, and there will be impunity, there will be accountability, and they will not be allowed to get away with it, and there will be consequences for their actions. It's really, really important. And it will be a big signal if the Security Council get to that point, and I very much hope they will, and I expect they will, given that it's, as I say, 5 years since we put such a regime in place. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Still morning. Secretary General will make some remarks and then we'll take some questions.
The situation in Ethiopia is spiraling out of control. Violence and destruction have reached alarming levels. The social fabric is being ripped apart. Hostilities in the Tigray region of Ethiopia must end now, including the immediate withdrawal and disengagement of Eritrean armed forces from Ethiopia. There is no military solution. Civilians are paying a horrific price. Indiscriminate attacks, including in residential areas, are killing more innocent people every day, damaging critical infrastructure, and limiting access to vital services. Hundreds of thousands of people have been forced to flee their homes since hostilities resumed in August, many of them for the second time. And we are also hearing disturbing accounts of sexual violence and other acts of brutality against women, children, and men. All parties must adhere to their obligations under international humanitarian law. Civilians must be protected, and so too humanitarian workers who are being attacked and even killed delivering life-saving humanitarian aid. The level of need is staggering. Even before the resumption of hostilities, 13 million people required food and other support across Tigray, Amhara, and Afar. Deliveries of aid into Tigray have been suspended for more than 7 weeks, and assistance to Amhara and Afar has also been disrupted. All parties must allow and facilitate the rapid and unimpeded passage of humanitarian relief for all civilians in need. The United Nations is ready to support the African Union in every possible way to end this nightmare for the Ethiopian people. We need the urgent resumption of talks towards an effective, lasting political settlement. And the international community must rally together now for peace in Ethiopia.
James?
James Bays, Al Jazeera. Could I first ask you on Ethiopia, you say there is no military solution, but the Ethiopian government and the Eritrean forces believe they are close to victory. And secondly, if I could ask you on Haiti, why is an international force needed? And are you close to getting countries coming forward, stepping up to provide such a force?
Well, first of all, the problem with wars is when both sides think they can win the war. And we have had episodes in which both sides have affirmed that conviction. My belief is that there is really no military solution. And it's important to think about the need to reconcile the communities that have been so dramatically impacted by this war. Now, in relation to Haiti, we live in an absolutely dramatic situation. We have the harbor blocked by the gangs, not allowing fuel and other needed materials to move. We have, because of that, no fuel in the city. Having no fuel, there is no water. And we have an outbreak of cholera. And you know that the treatment for cholera, the most important hitter, is hydration. And there is no water available in the city. So it's an absolutely nightmarish situation for the population of Haiti, especially Port-au-Prince. That is the reason why twice I referred in informal meetings to the Security Council and then formally through a report and letter that I presented, that I believe that we need not only to strengthen the police, strengthening it with training, with equipment, with a number of other measures, but that in the present circumstances we need an armed action to release the port and to allow for a humanitarian corridor to be established. I'm talking of something to be done in support of the Haitian police, and I'm talking of something to be done based on strict humanitarian criteria, independent of the political dimensions of the problem that need to be solved by the Haitians themselves.
Sherwin.
Thank you. Sherwin Briceby, South African Broadcasting. Secretary General, there are two issues in the Security Council. There's an argument that says this is an internal matter and sovereignty needs to be respected. And then there's also the space to allow the African processes to play itself out here. Is it time for the Security Council to take a more active role in terms of sanctioning members, resolutions, for example, as it pertains to what is happening
But
in
you are
Ethiopia?
referring to which of
To
the
the situation in Ethiopia.
in Ethiopia?
There's been an argument that this is an internal matter and the Council doesn't have any purview given its role in terms of international peace and security, and also to give the Africans the space to solve their own problems. Is it time for greater action from this Council?
Well, I do believe that this conflict, which essentially was born as an internal conflict, today has an international dimension. You have Eritrean forces inside Ethiopia. You have a delicate situation in the border of Sudan. So this is something that needs to be seriously considered by all entities, including the Security Council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Secretary General, when you say armed action, what you said that there should be an armed action in Haiti. Who should carry that out? Have you gotten any offers?
That is for the Security Council and member states to decide.
Do you believe that the conflict in Ukraine takes all the
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and dear friends, I'm Nupur Kukreti, and I work with UNICEF as a policy specialist in the Child Poverty and Social Protection team at the headquarters here in New York. I've been working on poverty and vulnerability issues across geographies, across grassroots and global policies for more than 25 years. I will be a master of ceremonies today. I welcome you all to the ECOSOC chamber to commemorate the International Day for Eradication of Poverty. A very special recognition to all our guests here who have arrived and have come from afar, from many countries. Welcome to you all. And also a big welcome to all our participants and guests who've joined us online on UNV Web TV. I would also take this opportunity to say a big thank you to some of our special guests who are sitting towards the far end of the room, all the young people and children who are with us today. A warm welcome to you all, and your voice is very important for us. So on the count of 1, 2, 3, if you can just stand up and say a big hello to everyone in this room. Are we ready? Brilliant. 1, 2, 3. You know, you are the future, and it's so important that you're here today. Thank you for joining us in this two-part ceremony. It's a commemoration, and the first part, we will listen to the delegates and activists, the voices of all the delegates and activists here. Followed by this, we will move to the UN Garden for a moment of reflection, where there is a stone on the commemorative stone to honor victims of extreme poverty that we will go to. Towards the end of the session, I will announce who the volunteers are, and we will all take you to that place. Now, coming to the fact of why are we celebrating this day today? On this day, which is the 17th of October, in 1987, over 100,000 people gathered in Trocadero in Paris to honor the victims of extreme poverty, violence and hunger. A place which is so symbolic because the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was signed at this place in 1948. A few years later, which is 30 years ago, in 1992, the UN General Assembly declared 17th October as the International Day for Eradication of Poverty, which is what we are celebrating today. Since then, this day honors millions of people suffering from poverty and vulnerability across the world. It represents a safe space for meaningful participation of people whose voices are rarely heard. It is a space to share not only the struggles that they face, but the aspirations for future. Today, we, people with lived experience of poverty, communities, members, representatives, United Nations agencies, and civil society representatives will reflect on commitment to end poverty by 2030. Today, we gather here to express our will to achieve dignity for all in practice and share our commitments to social justice, peace, and the planet. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please, we would like you to affirm your commitment to end violations of human rights everywhere. Violations that are causes and consequences of extreme poverty. Violations that are too many of us here in this room who face it in our daily lives, and we resist it in our daily lives. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to introduce you to a video message by His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General, United Nations. Can we have the video, please?
As we mark the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty, the world is moving backwards. COVID-19 plunged millions into poverty, setting back more than 40 years of hard-won progress. Inequalities are widening. National and household economies are battered by job losses, skyrocketing food and energy prices, and the gathering shadows of a global recession. At the same time, the climate crisis and raging conflicts are causing immense suffering, with the poorest people bearing the brunt. Developing countries are being squeezed dry, denied access to resources and debt relief to invest in recovery and growth. Sustainable Development Goals are being pushed far out of reach. The International Day for Eradication of Poverty is a wake-up call to the world. This year's theme, Dignity for All in Practice, must be a rallying cry for urgent global action. Action to invest in people-centered solutions, from health and decent work to gender equality, social protection, and transformed food and education systems. Action to transform a morally bankrupt global financial system and ensure access to financing and debt relief for all countries. Action to support developing countries as they transition from planet-killing fossil fuels to renewable energy and job-creating green economies. And to action to end conflicts, heal geopolitical divisions, and pursue peace. And action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. On this important day, let us renew our commitment to a better world for all. Let us consign poverty to the pages of history.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for highlighting the impacts of COVID, conflict, and climate change on the lives of poor. You've articulated so well the urgent needs and the actions that are required at multiple levels to achieve Agenda 2030, especially actions aimed at seeking people-centered solutions linked with education, health, decent work, and social protection. I'm pleased to now welcome His Excellency, Mr. Xaba Kurosi, President of the 77th United Nations General Assembly. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kakriti. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, Robert McNamara, The then president of the World Bank said in 1968, within 10 years, we can eliminate poverty from the world. He was deeply convinced about it, and I was 10 years old at that time. And as you see, I'm more than 20 years old now. I deeply regret that his plan has not materialized the way he wanted. In our age, poverty is not a natural phenomenon. It is now a matter of policy choice. It is a matter of choosing to end poverty, nationally and internationally, and committing to its complete eradication. We, in fact, made this choice. The pledge to prioritize ending poverty by 2030. And for 25 years, we were on track. A number of people living on less than $2.15 a day was steadily declining. But the 3 C's, climate change, COVID, and conflicts, interrupted this positive trend, and global poverty rates rose once again. Today, all 3 C's are still with us, together with some other manifestations of crises. Reducing absolute poverty seems to be beyond reach again, unless we make swift decisions and take substantial science-based policy action. George Orwell wrote that poverty annihilates the future, to capture the utter hopelessness experienced by the poor. So, how can we respond to the cause of the most in need among the 8 billion we are supposed to serve? Firstly, peace. The war in Ukraine is only one of the many armed conflicts globally, none of which should have been ignited in the first place. But compounded with the pandemic, this war has had a devastating impact on the poorest of the world. It has been hindering food production, disrupting food, fertilizer, and energy supply chains, and triggering inflation. If we want to see our no poverty goal achieved soon, we must end the fighting everywhere, including Ukraine. Second, science. Rooting our decisions in science will produce evidence-based solutions. Let us harness our scientific and technical knowledge to wipe poverty off the face of the earth, with a focus on women and children who disproportionately carry the burden. Poverty is multifaceted, as we know. We therefore need to go beyond GDP to see clearly the trends of growing inequalities and accumulating social, financial, and environmental debts. These bubbles will explode, and the consequences will have to be shouldered by someone. We cannot expect future generations to carry this burden. Let us develop methodologies that measure sustainability transformation and account for inequalities and vulnerabilities. Lastly, solidarity. The pandemic highlighted the importance of solidarity both for social cohesion within countries and for collective security among states. The pandemic truly shed light on our capacity to care for each other. This momentum must be kept alive. In addition to official development assistance, We must mobilize financial institutions, philanthropy, and private sector. We must create incentives for funding our mission to leave no one behind. As President of the General Assembly, I reaffirm my commitment to upholding the honor of all those living in poverty. This session wants to pursue an integrated agenda of peace, prosperity, and sustainability. We seek to create a world where, in the words of Nelson Mandela, I quote, "Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It is the protection of a fundamental human right, the right to dignity and a decent life." End of quote. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for reminding us that poverty is nothing but a matter of, choice, policy choice that we make. So that's a big reminder to all of us sitting here. Also, the reiteration that peace, science, and solidarity are important to work on if we are to achieve the objective of ending poverty by 2030. And thank you once again for reiterating your commitment to pursue an integrated agenda of peace, prosperity, and sustainability. I now would like to introduce you to Mr. Holohan, who's an activist. He's a community activist from Dublin. And a community activist is somebody who lives in poverty and has seen the struggles of life and voices their opinions and makes them heard, not just for themselves, but for everybody else who is in the same situation. So with that, I hand over the mic to you, Mr. Holohan.
Thank you. Can you imagine a world where the dignity of everyone is respected in practice, as is the international theme for the 17th of October this year? Can you just imagine living in poverty for 35 years or longer? Like I wasn't even born. My mother lived in poverty, struggled against it with all her courage, but stood alone. And so we also grew up in poverty. So it's way longer to overcome it. That is the reason I am here today, to try and show you that even though I have gone through this, that I still have a voice. And I intend to use it so my kids don't have to go through what I have gone through. I live by this quote by Joseph Brzezinski, and I have made it my mantra. Wherever men and women are condemned to live in extreme poverty, human rights are violated. To come together to ensure that these rights be respected is our solemn duty. Wherever we are in the world, if we are to improve access to rights, we need to take account of the hidden dimensions of poverty. The institutional maltreatment, the poverty-based discrimination, the shame and stigma of being poor are all obstacles for accessing rights. In Ireland, we are currently engaged in a campaign to include poverty-based discrimination as a 10th ground of discrimination in Irish equality legislation, so that people experience socio-economic discrimination, unequal access to jobs, housing, that they have a right to legal redress and a protection in the law. To discriminate against someone because of their socio-economic status is to disrespect the inherent dignity that we all hold within us. And this is the jigsaw piece puzzle. It's the missing part of the 9 grounds that we have already. So I hope you can all see it. Also, we have to remember that non-take-up of rights, when people don't access social benefits that they are entitled to, it's neither a lack of interest nor a personal failure, of the rights holders, but the lack of information about their existence or excessive administrative barriers in accessing these rights. It is important that if the law is introduced in Ireland, it also must be fully implemented, as passing a law in itself is not enough. Can you imagine a world where people don't have to worry about poverty or worry about getting a job because you are from a rundown area? Imagine all the lives you could save. Because personally speaking, when a man can't provide for his family, it starts to worry him. And in today's society, men are told and believed that they can't be weak, that they can't show emotion. That is why the male suicide rate is so high, because they don't open up and talk about the stresses of life. They hold it all in. Imagine having a law in place where socio-economic discrimination isn't allowed. I bet the count for the male suicide rates would go down. I can almost guarantee that it would. When I started with ATD, I was really nervous and shy because I felt my voice wasn't important. I thought that my poverty was just the normal. Until I saw the unjust system that we live in. I used to stutter a lot when I spoke, but then I became a father, and that gave me confidence to speak out about the things that matter in life. And I was blessed to be given so many chances to make a difference. You see, once I have breath in my body, I will continue to fight for a better future, not just for my kids, but for every kid in the world. So if anyone sees me speaking, and you feel you don't have a voice, let me tell you this. Everyone has a voice, especially those who have gone through poverty. I feel the only way out of poverty is to consult with the experts on poverty, and I feel the experts on poverty are the ones that are living in it. The only way I feel we can eradicate poverty is by including them at the tables of power such as this one. So on behalf of everyone that is going through poverty, I would just like to thank you for this opportunity to speak on such a high platform. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Holohan, for sharing your personal experience with us.
Thank you.
And also making your voice heard in this room and reiterating that nobody's voice is weak enough not to be heard. Yeah. Everybody has a voice, and it is a powerful voice, and it needs to be heard. Also, thank you for reiterating the fact that the experts on poverty are the ones who are actually living it. That's a very powerful message for all of us sitting in this room. You have actually made your voice heard in this very symbolic room, the EcoSoc room, which is where on a daily basis we have dialogues and discussions on ending poverty and sustainable development. So you speaking here is a very symbolic thing.
Thank you.
Now let me try and move to our next speakers. We have friends joining us from Burkina Faso, Ms. Elise Cabaret and Mr. Moise Kumpaure. Not everyone in this world has the opportunity and privilege to get a visa to travel to different parts of the world, and this is the case here as well. Our friends from Burkina Faso could not join us in person, but they have sent us a video message, which we will play now. And English-speaking members in the audience, we may need to use our devices to hear the translation. I think we're having a technical glitch. Okay, so I'm told that there's a bit of a technical glitch with the video, so we will come back after a few minutes to that. But let me then, in the meantime, introduce you to a very talented person who's sitting here in the audience with us, Ms. Julia Miranda, who is with us today, and she's a student and an activist involved with the ATD Fourth World Actions in New York. She will be performing a song by Louis Armstrong, which I'm sure all of us have heard, and maybe we can join her in as well in the chorus. What a wonderful world. So Julia, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Hello. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, wonderful. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred nights, and I think to myself, what a wonderful. Colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people walking by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They're much more than I'll ever know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Can we have another round of big applause for her? What a wonderful world. Let's make it even more wonderful by making a commitment to end child poverty and poverty in general by 2030. Thank you again, Julia. It's my pleasure now to introduce to you Mr. Carlos Hernandez. He's a human rights activist from Honduras and lives in New York and works with the immigrant community here. Mr. Hernandez will speak on the nuanced identity of being an immigrant driven by the values of the home he has left behind. Mr. Carlos, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you my story. I studied about dignity. My name is Carlos Hernandez. I left Honduras fleeing extreme poverty and violence at the age of 15. I am a survivor. Soy un catracho. I come from people who keep strong and protect happiness despite years of struggle. I grew up in San Pedro Sula, in an environment where gangs rule. La Mara MS por 13, la Mara 18, la Mao Mao, los Johnson. I am an immigrant, I am a Latino, I am a person of color. For me, living in dignity means having access to education, having access to food, and having access to a shelter. When I was a child, I had limited access to all these things. Often, my mother didn't have money to feed us. She was a single mother, and we were 6 kids. She was the person who protected me, who inspired me, who taught me the value of education. A strong woman with a big heart. My mother's story represents the story of the majority of mothers in my country, taking care of their families, finding solutions to the problems in the school and within the community. They are empowered mothers. They don't have a choice but to protect their children. When my father left us, money became impossible. We no longer had a place to live. Many times we didn't have food and I was hungry. Hunger hurts when you are little. No kid should suffer from hunger around the world with the resources that we have. This meant that everyone in my family had to work, no matter if we were children. I worked since I remember with my brothers and sisters. When you don't have access to anything, you only focus on survival. Being able to eat, to protect your family, and even when it's mean doing something you feel is not right. It's hard to escape the environment. I immigrated after gang members killed my older brother, Will. They wanted to kill me too, even though I was a child. To escape, I had to leave Honduras. I crossed Guatemala by foot and bus, through Mexico on the route of La Bestia, a dangerous train, until finally reaching the United States border. I ended up in immigration detention center in Texas and Washington State, where I met a lot of kids who were members of gangs. But first of all, they were artists, they were good painters, they drew very well, they were smart, and they were great magicians. Often, in Latin America, kids' youth lives are wasted because of simply surviving violence, take up all their energy. Many of them do not have a choice but to join gangs or to immigrate. My brother was a very talented. He was a singer. He even acted in a Honduran movie. He organized shows in his school with very few resources. I am convinced that if the Honduras or childhood had more access to education and he had been in a better environment, he would still be alive today and doing great things. Leaving my country gave me the opportunity to have access to education. The power of books make a difference in my life and open my mind. Someone gave me the story of Galileo Galilei, and I was so amazed to learn about the universe his work, and his impact in the world. I continue discovering books at the Immigration Detention Center. However, the administration denied me access to education because I didn't have documents. I was denied something that could dignify me. Dignity is not only about having access to economic resources. This is also about society looks at you because of the color of your skin or because of your gender, and how this gives you more or fewer privileges. This is racism. Despite everything that happened, when I got released from detention center, I graduated from high school and college, all while working 3 jobs and supporting my family. Like many immigrants, I send money to Honduras. I contribute not only to help my family, but to support my country. In my everyday life in New York, I try to find ways to help people have a dignified life, helping people get connected with education, have access to food, and do their paperwork. The community is a space where you learn and share those tools, where you find support. If there is no change in the world, I want to at least make a small change in the life of one person, and this is important. It is like planting a seed, una semilla. Being an immigrant is most of the time not a choice. It is a consequence of poverty. In Honduras today, our only choice is to fight, even though we had a lot of resources. I believe we should make big changes without outsiders imposing their perceptions of what it is the best for Honduras. We need our governments to protect activists trying to build a better future. We don't need any more martyrs. We need people alive making changes. We Hondurans have 2 powerful strengths. One, our capacity to fight against injustice and poverty. And 2, the capacity to be happy and share happiness, give the best of ourselves despite our struggle. Political changes are the ones that last and can change people's life. Living with dignity is possible if you policymakers make a choice to believe in everyone's capacity and intelligence, and to ensure access to human rights no matter who you are and where you came from. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, for sharing your personal struggles with all of us here today. Pointing out that dignity is something that is collective. It's also dependent on how people perceive us as people of color, as women, as immigrants, whatever identity we may have. So it's a lot also about perceptions. You've also reminded us that poor people have the potential and they have the talent, which needs to be harnessed if we are to talk about addressing and eliminating poverty by 2030. Thank you again for sharing your experience with us. I will now move to a video. I hope it is working now. I will move to a video of children from So I'm told that we will go back to the video of our friends from Burkina Faso. I had introduced to you earlier Ms. Cabre and Mr. Kwampari from Burkina Faso. They are cultural activists in Burkina Faso, and working very closely with children in Ouagadougou. Let's have the video now.
Dignity begins with a decent life. If you don't have Good morning. My name is Elise. I'm a participant in ATD Carmonde in Burkina Faso. Dignity begins with an identity document. If you don't have a birth certificate, you don't have an identity. And without an identity, you don't have a life. And you don't know where you're going. If you've got an identity, you'll always be able to be found. Thanks to this birth certificate, you know who you are and where you come from. That's where dignity takes all its importance. I've had to exert great effort, and I've suffered a lot because I didn't have the ability to have an ID. Getting a birth certificate was very difficult because I needed to have documentation to prove it. As a matter of fact, nothing is free, even though they say it is. If you can't pay, they don't listen to you in City Hall. And those who have the means to get what they want have greater access. When you can't give anything to anyone, and you can't bribe anyone, they tell you to come back a few weeks later. You know, in life, without an identity card, you can't send your kid to school. Without a birth certificate, you can't go anywhere. If I take my own example, up to now, I'm suffering because I didn't have a birth certificate. Why do I say this? Because if you haven't studied, it's difficult. There's a great deal that goes on in school, and one day I wanted to go to school with my daughter, and she didn't want me to go. And I asked her why, and she said, because if you don't have a beautiful dress on, like all the other kids, then the kids are going to make fun of you, and they're going to make fun of me, and the teachers are going to shun me. So that was a big problem. Here's why I bring kids into my own house, into my own home, because I have kids who have resources and kids who don't. I've gotten them all together, and we're learning together. And everyone is teaching. We're sharing knowledge. Because even the kids who live in poverty can teach the others and share what they think. My name is Moïse Cabré. I'm working at the Carmonde in Burkina Faso. There are many kids who live in poverty and they don't have a birth certificate. And if you don't have one, it's like you weren't alive. You need to have one to be considered a human being. those who are born in the hospital don't always have a birth certificate because you've got to pay for that. And if you don't have any money to buy food, you're not going to spend the little money you have for a birth certificate. In Ouagadougou, I support children who live on the street. But often at night, the police do roundups among the kids. And if you don't have an identity card, you're considered to be a robber, a thief. Especially now with terrorism, you're considered to be someone who's very dangerous. Many children spend some days in prison because of this. One thing that I would like to say is that my dignity was affected. And I was in prison, and I spent 6 months in jail. And when I had authorization to leave, it really affected me, and it affected the dignity of my children, because the people ignored me. And Ouagadougou, a woman in prison is different. If they know you've been in prison, you're considered less. It's an additional sort of poverty. That's why I say my dignity was affected in various ways. And now I'm trying to reconquer it. In Burkina Faso, there are a lot of people who have been displaced because of terrorism. Many people had to leave their fields. They've been confronted to the problems with food, and kids can't go to school anymore, especially when the terrorists are strong. And the poorest suffer, and they have to pay the price. We can't build a more fair society without including the poorest people. The people who have the most resources should turn towards the most destitute. The poorest people are pushing us to fight together so tomorrow's life will be better for all. When I left jail, I understood what dignity meant by the way people looked at me. We were there. We didn't even have any walls, and it was 4 barbed wires, which were electrified, which separated us from the road. And there were people who were walking by on the other side of the road, and when they would come close to us, they would cross over to avoid us. Through their attitude, through the way they looked at us, we understood that we were considered animals. We weren't considered human beings. We were considered waste. The prison officials put the most destitute, which they call, put them in front. They call them the moldy ones, whenever any visitors would come. And the reason they did that was to provoke or to encourage generosity on the part of the visitors. They treated us. He treated us like animals, and I really struggled. I fought against that. We created a group to address the administration and refuse such practices. Dignity is to feel respected. It's to feel that you're a human being with respect to other human beings. A person told me, if you've got dignity and your neighbor does not, your dignity has no meaning. We don't declare war on the powerful. It is together which we need. It's together that we must fight to build a new world. The powerful need the destitute to build this new world because they are an essential, the destitute are an essential part of society, and to construct true peace, we need social justice. For me, dignity means being recognized as someone who has thought, who has value. It also means feeling proud, proud of living and proud of participating. Thank you so much.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.